Om Akhandam Satchidanandam Avang Manasagocharam Atmanam Akhiladharam Ashraye Bhishta Siddhaye. I take refuge in the self, the indivisible, the existence, consciousness, bliss, absolute, beyond the reach of words and thought, and the substratum of all, for the attainment of my cherished desire. So we are reading the section on the inquiry into who am I, the various ideas of the Atman, of the self. What's going on in this chapter? Remember, the whole teaching is in the form of adhyaropa apavada, superimposition and desuperimposition. We are Brahman, but we have superimposed. That means, so superimposition means taking something for what it is not, taking a rope to be a snake by mistake, by error. We do not realize that we are Brahman, but we experience a world and a body and a mind, and we think of ourselves as limited beings, as jivas, and involved in samsara. So this is our current state. This is called adhyaropa, superimposition. How did we come to be in this state? This is what is going on. From Brahman up to this universe, and with the body-mind superimposed, here we are. So what do we superimpose? What do we think about ourselves? Why is that question important at all? It's because if you think about it, from what we have learned so far, this world and this body, mind, this is not made by us. No matter how spiritual you are, no matter how advanced you are, you cannot wipe out the world. You cannot wipe out this body. So even after spiritual knowledge, enlightenment, you still see a world. You'll still see this body. Why? Because now we can answer this. We have studied where did all this come from? The five primal elements. And those five primal elements, that's a mixture. That's what has created this entire world. Matter, basically. And all of that came from subtle matter, sukshmatan matter, the five subtle elements. And all of that came from Maya. And Maya is nothing other than the power of Brahman. So the power of God, let's put it this way. Saguna Brahman with Maya creates this universe or projects this universe, not us. You haven't projected this universe, I haven't projected this universe, nor have we projected this body, not even this mind. So even after enlightenment, you can't destroy all of this. This will still appear. But what we have done is, at our level as individual beings right now, what we can do is to repair the damage that we have done. What we have done is, we do not know ourselves as Brahman, and we do not know that this entire universe which you're experiencing is nothing other than Brahman. We think of it as a real threatening or tempting, raga dvesha, world out there, and we think of ourselves as these limited bodies, born and aging and prone to disease and accident and coronavirus and whatnot, and death. And we are these minds also, which are prone to sorrow and frustration and being unhappy. And we are in samsara. This damage we have done. Ishwar has not done anything. In all of this, what I'm saying in Hindi, they put it very nicely. ईश्वर सृष्टि भला दुख नहीं देता है. The creation of God actually does not give suffering. Suffering is due to our ignorance. We make the mistake thinking about Vedanta. God created this universe, and what a kind of problem he has put us in. Why did he do all of that? Actually, God has not put us in any kind of problem. What is the test of this? After Vedantic enlightenment, what do you expect to become? A Jivan Mukta, free while living. That's the goal. Then look at the people you think who have become enlightened. They all lived in this very world. They all lived in the body, often old body, aging, diseased body. They lived there. And yet they claimed they were free of suffering. They had transcended all. They did not complain, oh, we have become enlightened, but just for this nasty little universe. Why did God create this? Otherwise, I'm fine. No, none of them ever complained anymore. Before that, we complain. After that, no complaint. In fact, one way I say about enlightenment, one marker is you cannot complain after enlightenment. So don't be in a hurry to become enlightened. No more grumbling allowed after enlightenment. Why no more grumbling allowed? There is a serious issue here. The issue is this, that what we grumble about, the world and our own bodies and our own state of mind, all these are the things which we grumble about. This problem is ours. We have created it. And what Vedanta can do is to remove this damage that we have created. The damage that we have created, there's a technical name for that in Vedanta. It is called Jiva Shrishti, the projection, the superimposition, the errors committed by us in ignorance. And this we can repair by knowledge. Vedantic knowledge, I am Brahman. All of this is an appearance in Brahman, will repair the damage. The appearance will continue. And now we can see from what we have read so far why the appearance will continue. Brahman, limited by Maya, is called Saguna Brahman. And with that, Maya has projected the 5 subtle elements, the 5 gross elements, and out of that constructed the 14 worlds and all these bodies and all of that. So that will continue. That is always there. It is there now, and it will continue. This appearance will continue. But we will realize that it is an appearance and hence be free of all sorrow and suffering. So now we have seen what are the kinds of errors that people, ordinary people, and great philosophers also, they make about the self. We have seen 9 such points of view. 9. The ordinary man on the street who said, my children are myself. Then comes the first materialist who said, no, body is the self. I am body. Then comes the next materialist who says, I am the sensory system. Then, and these are all pretty sophisticated positions. You can actually argue them out pretty well. And then comes the next materialist who says, I am life. A living body has to be, only life has to be identified with self, not a body or just senses. Then the next materialist comes and says, no, I am mind. Then comes the first Buddhist, the mind-only school, if you remember. The 6th position was the mind-only school of Buddhism, who said the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the flashes of cognition, stream of cognition, is called self, or it generates the illusion of a self. And then comes the Mimamsa school and the Nyaya Vaisheshika school, Prabhakara Tarkika, we remember, and they say that the Anandamaya Kosha, that is the Atman. I'm not explaining in detail. And then comes the next school of Mimamsakas, the Kumarila Bhatta school, which said consciousness plus the Anandamaya Kosha is the Atman. And then finally, the 9th position was that of the emptiness school of Buddhists, the Shunyavadi, the most sophisticated. We saw a little taste of what Nagarjuna did last time, very sophisticated dialectics, which proves the emptiness, Shunyata Sarvadrishti Nama, of all philosophies. That is that the views are empty. So the Shunyavadi, who says, actually, there is no self as such, it is empty. What is empty, that we can debate about. One view would be, as the traditional Vedantins took it to be, emptiness means nothing. And it should not be dismissed. That emptiness means nothing at all. That seems very unfair to say, put it like that, because Nagarjuna himself and Chandrakirti after him has taken pains to show that, no, we are not saying that there is nothing. We have something deeper to say. But it should not dismiss it entirely. How is it possible that just about every one of the opponents of the emptiness school have interpreted them as nihilists, including the Vedantins? The Vedantins, the Mimamsakas, the Nyaya school, all of them held that this particular group of Buddhists, which is the core philosophy of Mahayana, by the way, they are saying that nothing exists. And I was talking to this professor of philosophy at Harvard, and I still remember, we're standing in Emerson Hall in the hallway and talking about this. And he said, I was saying that Shankaracharya dismisses the Madhyamaka school as nihilists, as they say that nothing exists. And it's sort of unfair. I'm a non-dualist, I'm an Advaitin, and still I seem to think that this is, he has been too cavalier in this, just dismissing them like this. And this professor, he said, You know, after all of Nagarjuna's sophisticated dialectics, it still might amount to that he is saying it is nothing. So note that the great Vasubandhu, who was Nagarjuna's successor, successor, and a great philosopher of the mind-only school, he too, a Buddhist, he too dismissed the Madhyamaka as saying that they're nihilists, that they really mean that there is nothing. Anyway, so this debate goes on. Our view as Advaitins, modern Advaitins, and that was the view, I think, of many of the modern Vedantic philosophers, Dr. Radhakrishnan, T.R.V. Murthy, Chandradhar Sharma, whom I referred to yesterday, and certainly Swami Sharadanandaji, and a number of Abhedanandaji, I think Vivekananda also. So our view is that that is just another way of expressing Brahman, the absolute, not nothing. All right. Now, these are the 9 positions. And here comes the great hero now to end the climax of the whole section is the Advaitin, of course, is going to come and is going to show that they're all wrong. And the self is Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. The self is pure consciousness, is pure being, is ultimate bliss, as revealed by the Upanishads. And the positions taken by them are wrong. And this conclusion, the non-dualist or Advaitin will do in 2 ways. One way is, first of all, the Advaitin will say, I don't have to prove anything. Notice that each of these positions, they have cut the previous position. So each philosopher comes forward and gives a quotation from the Shruti, the Upanishads, to support his position, and an argument, reasons, good reasons to support his position, and a corresponding experience, anubhava, Shruti Yukti Anubhava. But those are cut down by the next philosopher who comes along. And that position is cut down by the one who comes after that. So they have cut each other down. At the most, you can say the final and the most sophisticated and the subtle position is that of the Madhyamaka of Nagarjuna. That might remain. But basically, everybody else has been defeated already. So I don't have to do it. You have done it yourself. You have fought against each other and you've decimated yourself. So I don't have to go and case by case and take up each one. At the most, I might have to defeat the Madhyamaka philosopher or the Shunyavadi. So that will be one approach. They cut each other down, and this is something he's taking from. It's a very interesting approach, which if you remember, Gaudapada has done in the Mandukya Karika. Parasparam viruddhyante, tairayam na viruddhyete. He says this is asparsha yoga. Advaita Vedanta is the no contact philosophy of non-duality. All other philosophers contradict each other, but we have no contradiction with any of them. Why? It seems that you are contradicting all of them. We have no contradiction with any of them because they're all false. How can the reality have any contradiction with the false? And Gaudapada gives the example of all these other philosophers are like this, on a village path. Suppose you're going on your elephant and there's a madman on your path who says, come, charge your elephant against my elephant. Let's have an elephant fight. But the madman doesn't have an elephant. He's just standing there. So you can't have an elephant fight with a madman because so similarly, all these philosophers, they have no position to defend anyway. This is all false. And therefore, Advaita need not have contradiction with them with that. So this is one way. He will do that now. The second way will be, no, let's do the hard work of taking up each position and showing that they are wrong and establishing the non-dualist position by giving Shruti Yukti Anubhuti, quotations from the Upanishad, support from the Upanishads, arguments, good arguments, and experience. So first, 132, text number 132. Etesham putradinam anatmatvam uchyate. Now it will be shown that all these, from the sun to the void, are not the self. All these 9 positions, which we just talked about, And remember, these are not just 9 positions. There are many more. It's just a sampling of the major philosophies. Um, the traditional classification talks about 12 philosophies, 6 astika philosophies and 6 nastika. Astika means the orthodox, which accept the Vedas as revealed scripture, as a source of spiritual knowledge, and the 6 unorthodox or heterodox, which do not, which reject the Vedas. So the 6 orthodox schools are the Nyaya, the Vaisheshika, the Sankhya, the Yoga, the Purva Mimamsa, and Vedanta or Uttara Mimamsa. These are the so-called Sharadarshana, 6 philosophies. But there are 6 other philosophies which are with outside the orthodox Hindu fold. So there is the Charvaka, the materialists. And we just saw there are many kinds of materialists, some crude, some sophisticated. There's the Charvaka. And then there is the Jaina school, which we have not seen in this text. There is the Buddhist school. There are 4 Buddhist schools. The Shautrantika, Vaibhasika, the Yogachara Vijnanavada, and the Madhyamaka Shunyavada, of which we have seen 2. The mind-only school and the emptiness school, we have seen 2 of them. So there are a total of 12 in this classification. There is a title that if you are a master of all of these 12 philosophies, you get the grand title of Dwadasha Darshana Kanana Keshari, the lion who stalks in the forest of 12 philosophies. That's your title. So you'll have to spend lots and lots of time with dusty old Sanskrit texts to get that title. And another book, if you go to the Sarva Darshana Sangraha, which is a compendium of ancient Indian philosophies written about 500, 600 years ago, by Madhavacharya, not Madhavacharya, Madhavacharya. In that book, you get 15 different philosophies. So there are many, many positions, of which only 9 have been taken here. So he says, Etesham, these 9, which say that the self or Atma is nothing but Putraadinam, son or child, etc. Son or child or body and senses and life and mind and intellect and the causal body and so on, or emptiness. Anatmatvam, none of them are the self. And that will be explained now. They're going to explain that why they are not the self. First, remember 2 approaches. First, this approach we will see. Etai ati prakritaadi vadibhihi ukteshu shruti yukti anubhava abhaseshu purva ukta shruti yukta anubhava abhasanam uttara shruti yukti anubhava abhasair atmatva badha darshanat Putradinam anatmatvam spashtameva. Since in all these fallacious citations of scriptural passages, arguments, and personal experiences made by the different classes of people enumerated above, beginning with the extremely deluded, in support of their respective views about the self, the subsequent views contradict the previous one, it becomes clear, quite clear, that all these items from the sun to the void are not the self. Okay, what was said here? By all of these positions, starting with the the ordinary person and the materialists, up to the emptiness school, they have given various theories, and all of them, all these theories they do not give a correct view of the self. Atmatva Bada Darshana. They are refuted. Why are they refuted? Because the Shruti Yukti Anubhuti, the citations from the Upanishads, the arguments they give, and the experiences they cite, they are not real. They are not correct. Why are they not correct? This is Shruti Yukti Anubhava Abhasa. Shruti Abhasa. Abhasa means appearance, false, shadow. We are quoting from the Upanishads. Why is it a shadow? Why is it false? It's false because what you are quoting, we are saying to them, what you are quoting is not the purport, the meaning, in Sanskrit, tatparya, the conclusion of the Upanishads. So, for example, somebody said body is the self, and that philosopher quoted from the Upanishad saying Annamaya Atma from Taittiriya Upanishad, which is very convenient to mine for these sentences. What you're doing is you're plucking out a sentence at random. And it is not the purport of the whole text. If body is the self, and that was the teaching of the Upanishad should have stopped there. But the Upanishad itself cuts down that position. What does the Upanishad say? Anyantaratma pranamaya. The self is anya, not the body. It is subtler, inward, antara. And the self is prana, life. But then again, that position is abandoned. And then it goes to the mind. That position is abandoned. Mind is also not the self. It goes to the intellect, Vijnanamaya. Then it goes to the Anandamaya, and so on. So these are not positions that the Upanishad sticks to. Then why has the Upanishad said it? One might say this is called Arundhati Nyaya. The Arundhati star is to be pointed out. It's a very faint star. So it's pointed out by pointing to first the bright, first the branch of the tree, and from the branch of the tree next to it, look at the bright star, and next to that you notice the a fainter star, and near it you will see the faint, much more faint Arundhati. You can't just, if you just point, look, there's Arundhati, you may know which one it is, but the person who doesn't know it can't make out in the mass of stars. So you go from the gross, the most obvious, to the more subtle, to the less obvious, until you point out what you wanted to point out. So people who identify themselves with the body, you have to start there. The method of a good teacher is to go from the known to the unknown, from the near to the far. Here it's not far, it's closer, in fact, from the outer to the inner, and from what is to what shall be, from what you are comfortable with or to what the Vedanta wants to teach you. So that's the method of a good teacher, and that's what it's going on. That's what's going on. Instead of seeing that, you different positions, there are different philosophers, you are picking out random statements which support your position and quoting that. That is not the meaning, the purport, the ultimate purpose of the text. You have to read the whole text before you can quote something. So this is called Shruti Abhasa, a false citation of the text of the scriptures. This is an English saying that the devil quotes the scriptures, so something like that. Then comes the Yukti Abhasa, false arguments, wrong arguments. And these wrong arguments have been refuted by themselves. You see, somebody said, my son is myself. And remember the next person who came along and said that the body is the self and gave an argument. You may agree or not agree with the argument. There's an argument which shows that one abandons one's children if one's body is threatened. So, therefore, the child cannot be the self, the body is the self. That's an argument. And that argument cut down the earlier arguments. So this is called Yukti Abhasa. Your arguments have already been refuted. Each one argument has been refuted by the one coming after you. Then what's next? Anubhava Abhasa. Abhasa means shadow. Anubhava means experience. But these are experiences. I feel my child is my own self, or I feel the body is me. I feel it actually. How can you say this experience is false? This experience is not false. But the meaning that you are deriving from that experience, because I'm so attached to the body, therefore I must be the body. No, it does not follow. So the next experience will come along and they say, I am the sensory system. For example, the body is paralyzed. I don't feel the way I feel this hand is mine. If this hand is paralyzed, I will not feel that it's me in that way. It just looks like there's no sensation, nothing there, but this will feel like me because I can move it and feel. So that means the sensory system is important in the sense of self. And the person will say, senses are the self. Then somebody will come and say, no, mind is the self. I'm always closely identified with the mind. When I'm dreaming, I have no connection with the sleeping body. I have no self connection. That means the sense that I do not identify with the sleeping body. I do not identify with the sleeping senses. Rather, where am I? I'm identified with the dream body and the senses in the dream world. So what is going on? I'm identified with the mind, the dreaming mind. So the mind is the self. So this kind of argument, this kind of experience, it cuts down the previous experiences. All of these experiences are cut down. Ultimately, you come to the emptiness. So, and so as you say, they are all cut down. They do not prove what they are meant to prove. They do not, the Upanishad scriptures quotations you are showing, they do not prove that the self, you have not shown that the self is body or mind or intellect. The arguments do not show that. The experiences you have quoted, they also do not amount to showing that the self, Atma, is body or mind or intellect or whatever. So now he says, Purva Purva, by each, the earlier one has been cut down. Uttara Uttara. Uttara Uttara means the ones who come afterwards. They are cut down by the Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava, Abhase. They're all like shadows. They're all false quotations, false arguments, and false experience. Of course, we are saying it. I'm sure all those philosophers would be very annoyed. They don't think that they are false arguments or quotations. So this is, he says, Spashtameva, it's very clear. Whatever you have said is not the Atma, is not the self. Now, at this point, they may say, that's very clever, Mr. Non-dualist or Mrs. Non-dualist. You are avoiding the hard work. You must, like each of us, we gave quotations from your Upanishads. So you also must give quotations from your Upanishad to show that the self is consciousness and, pure being, Satchidananda. And you must use those quotations to show that our quotations are wrong. Can you show us from the Upanishad that what we said, body is the self, show us that it's wrong from the Upanishad? One. Then you must give arguments on top of that to cut down our arguments. And then you must show it in experience. Where do we experience that we are existence, consciousness, bliss? So do the hard work. Don't just say we have cut down each other and goodbye, finished. It's all refuted. So now the second approach comes, where the actual hard work is done of step by step refuting each one. It's a long sentence, text number 134. Kincha pratyag asthula achakшу aprano amana akarta chaitanyam chinmatram sadityadi prabala shruti virodhad asya putradi shunya paryantasya jadasya chaitanya bhasyatvena घटादिवद अनित्यत्वाद अहम ब्रह्मेति विद्वदनुभव प्राबल्याच्च तत्तत् श्रुति युक्ति अनुभवाभासानां बाधितत्वादपि पुत्रादि शून्य पर्यन्तम अखिलम anatmaiva. So this text cuts down all the 9 positions. How? In one sentence, long sentence, where a lot has been packed into it. What is he going to do now? He's going to give us, he means the Sadananda Yogendra, who's taking the side of the non-dualists. He's going to give us quotations from the Upanishad to show all the earlier quotations are wrong. The claim that they are all shadows, they're false, they have been wrongly applied. Not that the Upanishad sentences are wrong, it's just they have been wrongly applied. He's going to show that. They do not apply, they do not pertain to the real self. Then he's going to take up arguments which will cut down their arguments. And then he's going to take up experience, which is going to cut down their experience, and therefore show that all of those theories about the self are wrong. Now, let's look at the Upanishads first. 9 quotations to cut down each of those nine positions who had quoted their own preferred Upanishad sentences. So, kincha, moreover, I've already shown you contradict each other, but now more. If you want me to tell you in detail, all right, I'll tell you. Moreover, so each word I will take up and I'll show why he's making this quotation. Each word is actually, it points to a quotation from the Upanishad. He's not giving the entire sentence. He's just taking a word from each sentence of one particular Upanishad. So you're supposed to know everything, all the Upanishads. If you just quote one sentence, you should know, oh, this is one word. You should know that this comes from this sentence of this Upanishad. So he says, pratyag. Pratyag means inner. What is he quoting here? He is quoting, so I don't know if you've got this book, in the next page, you'll find all the details are given. Where are the quotations from? So he's quoting from the Kathopanishad. Kathopanishad verse, very nice verse, important verse in Kathopanishad. which shows why is it that we don't realize ourselves as Satchidananda, and who will realize the Satchidananda that become enlightened. So the mantra goes, Paranchikhani vyatrinat swayambhu tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman kaschid dhira pratyagatmanamaikshat avritta chakshur amritatvam icchan. So it says that we have been created, sort of damaged, or created in such a way that our senses flow outwards and we do not see the reality inwards. Parang pashyati nantaratman. And kashchid dhira, some patient, some heroic spiritual seeker takes the trouble of shutting down those external experiences and turning the attention inwards and discerning, using viveka, the help of the Upanishad and Vedanta, discerning the real Atman in all this experience. Kashchid dhira avritta chakshu, not being engaged in the world outside. Literally means covering the eyes, but it means not being engaged in sensory activities. Pratyagatmanam realizes the inner self. And why would he do all this? Amritatvam icchan, desiring immortality. There is no immortality to be found in the world outside. There's only death and disease and suffering and aging. But immortality, desiring freedom from death, this person turned inwards and realized the inner self. All right, so here from all this, he has taken one crucial word, pratyag. Pratyag atmanam aikshat, realize the inner self. He has taken one word, inner. Why? What was the first theory? My son is myself. Where is the son? Inner or outside? Outside. So clearly the self is inner. The Kathopanishad says the self is innermost within yourself. You're the core of your being, not something outside or someone outside. So this cuts down your position that the self is something outside. Upanishad cuts it down. Then you see how this is the way he's going to go. Each one he will take up. Then the next word, asthulam, not gross, not physical. This is a quotation from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Asthulam ananu arasvam adirgham. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the quotation is given here. The self is not gross, not atomic, not short, not long, and so on. Everything is denied. Neti neti. Everything is denied of the self. Therefore, but the key word is asthulam, not gross. Who is the second position? The second philosopher who came along. Body, the gross body, physical body is the self. And look, here is a quotation. The Upanishad says that which is gross or physical is not the self. So your position is wrong. Then comes the next word, he says, achakshu. So this is the quotation you will see from Mundaka Upanishad. Achakshu shrotram tadapani padam. Achakshu means literally without eyes, without senses, without sensory system. This is a quotation from the Mundaka Upanishad. Very beautiful section. We will do all this eventually. That's why we are reading the Vedantasara as a sort of entry into all of this. There's a very beautiful section in the Mundaka Upanishad where the student Shaunaka, he goes to the teacher Angira. Shaunako havai mahashalo angirasam vidivadupasanna papracha kasminnu bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati iti. So this Shaunaka, who was a very well-to-do householder, notice he was a householder, he goes to this master and Angiras and asks him, sir, what is that by knowing which everything is known? Kasminnu bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati. Everything in the universe is known, inside, outside, everything, by knowing one thing. Then the teacher tells him that knowledge, you're seeking knowledge, but first of all, back up a little. Knowledge is of two kinds, relative and supreme, the lower and the higher. Tasmai sahovacha dve vidye veditavye iti hasmayad brahma vido vadanti parachaiva paracha. So he said unto the student, there are two kinds of knowledge, the higher and the lower, the transcendent and the relative, para para. And this is what we have heard from the great masters of who have taught us about Brahman. So immediately one becomes curious. So what is the lower knowledge and what is the higher knowledge? What is the relative knowledge? What is the transcendent knowledge? So the teacher goes on, Tatra pararig Veda Yajurveda Samaveda Atharva Veda Shiksha Kalpa Vyakaranam Niruktam Chando Jyotishamiti Ataparayayata Daksharam Adigamyate. He says, the upper, the lower wisdom, the lower knowledge is basically all knowledge, whatever you learn in the university, the whole syllabus, the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, the 6 auxiliaries, Vedangas, which are useful for studying the Vedas, Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Chanda, Jyotisha, all of that, all knowledge, what you know as knowledge, whatever you read in school, everything is lower knowledge. If everything is lower knowledge, then what is the higher knowledge? You have just covered everything in the syllabus. So no, the higher knowledge is that by which God is realized. The ultimate is realized. Yaya akshara adigamyate. The word used for the ultimate reality is akshara, the unchanging. The akshara, by which you realize the akshara, that is called the higher knowledge. Now see how the teacher is building up to answer the question. What was the question? What is the one thing by knowing which I can know everything? And that one thing he's going to answer now. So I'm going to point out that one thing what you are asking for is this akshara. Now, what is this akshara? What is this like, the ultimate reality? Yattadadreshyam agrahyam agotram avarnam achakshu achakshu shrotram tadapani padam nityam vibhum sarvagatam sukshmam yadbhutayonim paripashyanti dhiraha. So, that ultimate reality, which we are going to realize, you asked about that, it is beyond all the senses. It is adrishyam. Adrishyam means you can't see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it. And agrahyam, it is beyond the range of all the motor organs, like the 5 organs of action. You can't walk to it, you can't catch hold of it with your hands, and so on. Then I still remember a very little funny incident, silly, but it just came to mind. There was once this brahmachari who was very intense. He was always very serious. I never saw him smile. He ultimately left. It goes to show that you have to be a little relaxed even in spiritual life, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So he was like, he was going to realize God within the next week or so, by the weekend. And he was always very rigid and very, very, tense. So I remember once after food in the ashram, we were going to wash our hands. And brahmachari, suddenly he rushes forth and he opens the tap, and then he's washing his hands like this. And the old Swami who was in charge of the ashram, he looked at the brahmachari, he's telling me, look how he grabbed the tap. It's like he's grabbing Brahman, catching hold of Brahman. That's how in Bengali he was saying. কলটাকে ধরছে যেন ব্রহ্মকে, এই ধরলাম ব্রহ্মকে. But you can't catch hold of Brahman. It is agrahyam. Anyway, silly. Adreshyam agrahyam agotram avarnam. So agotram, literally gotra means Hindus have a lineage. So if you ask what is your gotra, we trace our lineage back to some rishi or the other. But here gotra means no lineage, no source. You are consciousness. Where have you come from? From nowhere. Everything has come from you or appears in you, but you have not come from anywhere. You are the causeless cause, let us say, in one way. So agotra means without any, so it is by itself. That ultimate reality is by itself. It's not part of the chain of causation, actually. It is not even a cause. Then avarnam, literally without color. That means without any characteristics, nirgunam, without any characteristics. And then he says, achakshu shrotram tadapani padam. So it is not a sentient being with sense organs, with eyes and ears, or with hands and feet. No, we are not talking about this jiva here. We are talking about just consciousness itself, which does not have eyes and ears and all these things. So that is the thing he has picked up when he says achakshu shrotram. This portion, the ultimate reality, which is yourself, is without sensory system. Then what is this? That Charvaka, that materialist who said the self must be identified with the sensory system. It's only when the senses are functioning that we have a sense of self. So no, the Upanishad rejects that also. See, all of this, just one word he's giving. This is all packed into that word. Then aprano, amana, akarta. So each of them is cutting down one position. For example, aprano. This is from the Mundaka Upanishad. Aprano hyamana shubhra, without the vital force and without the mind, pure. Pure means pure consciousness. Mundaka Upanishad. Same thing he's quoting. And then, so mind and prana are rejected by this quotation itself. Aprano hyamana shubhra. Then there was one Buddhist who said Vijnanamaya Atma. The mind school, mind only school of Buddhist, the Vijnanavadi, he said the Vijnanamaya Kosha is the Atma, the sheath of intellect. Here he says Akatta, the non-doer. Remember, agentship is a characteristic of the Vijnanamaya Kosha. And here we are quoting from the Upanishad, which says the self, pure consciousness, is not an agent, is not a doer. Where is this quotation from? Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Anantascha Atma Vishwarupa Hyakatta. So the self, the self, you are limitless, you appear as the universe, and you are not a doer of any action. You are not an agent of an action. So Akatta. Then there was another group, the Prabhakara Tarkika, Nyaya Vaisheshika school, and one school of the Mimamsa, who came forward and said, the Anandamaya Kosha, what you experience in deep sleep, when everything is resolved into a potential blankness, that is the real nature of the self. Then he says, he gives a quotation from the Kaivalya Upanishad. Nachasti vetta mama chid sadaham. Very beautiful quotation, Kaivalya Upanishad, which says, I, the self, no one can know me. I am not an object for anyone. Then how is it known? Chit sadaham. I am eternally consciousness. I am light shining forth. By my shining forth alone, I am known by myself. But I am never known as an object. I am not an object to anybody. So this quotation, Nachasti, there exists no vetta, knower of mine. Then who am I? Chit sadaham. I am always of the nature of consciousness. This cuts down that position that we are of the nature of the deep sleep experience, blankness. No, I am always consciousness. Then you remember the next group came along and said, your consciousness plus that blankness in deep sleep. The Kumarila Bhatta, Purva Mimamsa philosopher. We are light and darkness together. Then he gives a quotation, Chinmatra, consciousness only, not consciousness plus Anandamaya Kosha, not consciousness, not light and darkness, light only. Where is this quotation from? This is from again from the Kaivalya Upanishad. Chinmatro aham sadashiva. I am pure consciousness. I am of the nature of the eternal being, Sadashiva. And then Sat, the final quotation is from the Chandogya Upanishad. Sadeva Somyadamagra Asit. Before all of this universe manifested, there existed only one pure being. And Tattvamasi Shvetaketu, that being, pure being, you are, O Shvetaketu. 9 times in the Chandogya Upanishad. Tattvamasi, Tattvamasi. You are that, you are that. Why is he quoting this? He's cutting down the school of the void, emptiness. We're saying Asat, non-existence. If you interpret it in that very simplistic way, non-existence is the self. He says, no, self is existence itself. So all the 9 positions have been cut down by these quotations from the scriptures. Now, at this point, one might object, Hey, wait a minute. They also quoted scriptures. Once somebody said, um, Annamaya Atma, the body is the self. It's a quotation from the Upanishad. You are quoting that it's not, because you quoted Pratyagat, or you quoted Asthula. It is not the gross body. But who is to say whose quotation is right? Is your quotation right or his quotation right? Both are quotations. You have to see, then how do you decide? There is a whole process of deciding. The point is to decide what is the purport, the meaning, in Sanskrit, tatparya, the whole point of the text. What are they trying to point out? Are they trying to point out that the body is the self, or are they trying to point out that the body is not the self, and that consciousness is the self? So if you read the text, and if you apply those methods, there are very interesting methods to actually process a text. It's called Shadvidalinga. It'll come up later in this book. How do you understand a text? How do you scientifically, systematically, methodically derive the meaning from a passage? So by that we realize that what we are saying is the purport of the text, that body is not the self, prana is not the self, mind is not the self, intellect is not the self, the immortal consciousness which we are, that is the self. And so this is the purport of the text of the Upanishads. So your quotation is not right. Our quotation is a stronger sentence from the Upanishad. Stronger means it points to the purport of the Upanishad. Yours is further away. So he says, Prabala Shruti Virodhat, because your quotations contradict stronger quotations which we are giving. Asya putradi shunya paryantasya. All of this from the son or the child up to the emptiness, all of this is, so now he's going to give argument. So now this portion about quoting the Upanishad is over. I have shown you that your quotations are weaker, our quotations are stronger, we win. We have overruled. Your objections are overruled. Now, argument. Can you give a reason to show that we are wrong? That the body is not the self, that the mind is not the self. We have given so many reasons. Why don't you give us some of your reasons to show that these are wrong? And so he says one very powerful master stroke he gives. He says, Putradi shunya paryantasya jarasya chaitanya bhasyatvena. From the son or the child up to emptiness, all the 9 candidates you have put forward for being the self, they are all experienced by consciousness. They are all objects to consciousness, including the most subtle proposition you had, that the emptiness is the self. But that is also revealed by consciousness. Who thought of it? To whom does it appear? What realizes that emptiness? So all of this, body, mind, even emptiness, they're all illumined by, revealed by consciousness. Chaitanya bhasyatvena. Jadasya, they are objects. Being objects, they may be a gross object like the body, or they may be a very subtle or abstract thing like emptiness, but they are all objects to consciousness. What are you? Are you an object or are you consciousness? You are consciousness. You are always on this, consciousness is always on your side, and what is an object to consciousness. You cannot be an object. You are the knower of the object. You are the experiencer of the object. That's why you are called the subject. So jarasya chaitanya bhasvatvena ghatadivad anityatvad. All of these are illumined by consciousness. They are objects. They are insentient. Being insentient, they are matter. And matter, all of matter, starting from Maya down to this universe, is continuously changing. Anityam, it changes. Maya itself is not anityam, but all the products of Maya are anityam. They're subject to change. They're subject to change, they cannot be the self. Why can they? It's a little convoluted, the argument here. Why can they not be the self? See, how they're doing it is, they are objects to consciousness. If you had stopped there, that itself would have been a very strong argument. That I am conscious, I am aware, this is very clear. And if you show anything that is I'm aware of, then I can't be that. The first principle of Drigdrishya Viveka. You can stop there, but he has gone a little further. All the things that you said, the child or the body or the senses or the mind, these are all objects to consciousness. Whatever is an object is material, jara. And whatever is material is subject to continuous change. Whatever is subject to continuous change is non-eternal. It has a beginning and an end. You might say so, but if it's non-eternal, it can't be the self. The self cannot have a beginning and an end. So here's a very complicated argument, and a slightly complicated argument. The self cannot have a beginning or an end. Why not? Suppose you say self has a beginning and end. It cannot, in the sense that this goes against a fundamental tenet of all Indian philosophies. Remember, he's arguing against different Indian philosophers, the law of karma. The law of karma states that whatever we are experiencing is because of our past karma. Causes have effects. Conditions have given rise to these things. So causes have consequences, actions have consequences, causes have effects. That is karma. It is our past karma which is manifesting as this present life. Now imagine if I, the self, had a beginning, then I would suddenly be manifested with a body and a mind and a family and like good and bad things in my life. Where did they come from? Where did they come from? Because you are saying that I did not exist earlier, so it cannot be the result of my past karma. This is called akrita abhyupagama, the sudden arrival, the contingency, the sudden arrival of things which are uncaused. This is taken as a great error. Any philosopher you can push to this position is defeated. It's like being checkmated. So you're saying that things can happen without any cause. Here, some of the theistic religions, what do they say? God created all of it. Then the problem will be God will be responsible for the differences in the world. God will be partial then. Whereas in Indian philosophy, what happens in all the schools of Indian philosophy, it is our karma which is the result, which has resulted in this life. Cause has given rise to this effect. Second big problem will be if the self comes to an end, then a lot of karma which we have done, that we will not get the results. Some people may have done evil things, and suddenly the self comes to an end. Self is non-eternal. Self comes to an end. Then who will get the results of all the evil deeds? This is called kritanasha. What has been done is destroyed without giving results. But no, the law of karma is one common idea among all these philosophers, except the materialists. All these philosophers, they hold that whatever we are experiencing is because of past karma, and whatever we have done, it will give rise to effects. So the self must be eternal. And that's why the jivatma, the self, is regarded as eternal in all Indian philosophies, except the materialists. Even the Buddhists, immediately many people will say, no, Buddhists don't agree with this. Even the Buddhists, they say the self is momentary, but the stream of consciousness with their momentary selves, from moment to moment, that is eternal. That goes on forever. So non-eternal self cannot be admitted. But if you say body is the self or mind is the self, these are all non-eternal. Why are they non-eternal? Because they're material. Why are they material? Because they're objects of consciousness. Why are they objects of consciousness? Because they are experienced. Therefore, the argument is, or just take the simple core argument. All of these candidates you put forward, all these 9 candidates for being the self, they are all experienced by the self. How can they be the self? Just you can take that much of an argument. So this argument is a very good argument, and it cuts down all those other positions. It actually is a pretty deep argument. Experience. Please give us an experience. We have quoted innumerable experiences to show body is the self or mind is the self. Can you give us an experience to show that body, mind are not the self? Brahman, whatever you say is the self. He says, Aham Brahmeti Vidvad Anubhava Prabalyacha. So I am Brahman is the experience of enlightened beings, and that is a more powerful experience than all your experiences. Why? What he's saying here is, yes, I am Brahman, this is experienced. I am the self is Brahman, Atma is Brahman is an experience. All enlightened people experience this. Experience this means they know this, they realize it. One might say, but there are so few in number. There are billions and billions of unenlightened people. So our experience, I am the body or I am the mind, I am a miserable creature, this must be reality. Just because a few people feel that they are God, they must be deluded. They are megalomaniacs. We are not God, we are just this body mind. No, a true experience will always cut down a false one. Just as no matter in your dreams, suppose there are millions of people who say that this is real, this is real. The moment you wake up, the one dreamer wakes up, all the opinions of millions of people in the dream is immediately cancelled. So who can say this is right or wrong? A person who experiences the world just like us and then goes on to become enlightened and sees it from the other side, that person can say. Who can say that it's not a snake, it's a rope? The person who has seen the snake just like us by mistake and then corrects it and sees that it's a rope, that person can say. Unless we see both sides of it, we have no right to say he is wrong and we are right. I am Brahman. Do you have any idea of what is Brahman? Have you ever experienced that? No. Then how do you know that that is wrong and you are right? Experience that, realize that, then say, no, there's no such thing. I am the body is the final answer. Nobody has ever said that. Okay. And so he says, all those earlier quotations from scriptures, arguments, and experiences, badhitatva, they have been refuted, cancelled, negated by what we have just said. Putradi shunya paryantam akhilam anatmaiva. From the child onwards to emptiness, all of those are not the self, they are not Atma. So now all these people, they're saying, all right, so what is the self? It's a wise guy. So you're a wise guy. What is the self? Tell us what's the self in your opinion. Now he will quote, he will state the Advaitic position. 135. Ataha tattadbhasakam nitya shuddha buddha mukta satya swabhavam pratyak chaitanyameva atmavastu iti vedanta vidvadanubhavaha. Therefore, the innermost consciousness, which is by nature eternal, pure, intelligent, free, and real, which is the illuminer of all those unreal entities, which was mentioned earlier, that is the self. This is the experience of the Vedantists or the illumined, the persons who have had Vedantic realization. And then he says in text number 136, Evam madhyaropaha. So this is the limit of superimposition. This above is an account of superimposition. Which one? What we had started from text number 122. If you go back, no, not 122, it's wrong. What had started from Adhyaropa Apavada. So from 32, from text number 32, long way back, text number 32, what is Adhyaropaha? Text number 32, remember, Asarpa Bhutayam Rajyo Sarparopavat Vastuni Avastu Aropa Adhyaropaha. Text number 32, not page number 32, text number 32. What is superimposition? The mistake, taking the rope to be a snake, that is called superimposition. So taking Brahman to be the world, it is superimposition. So from that till now, what we were discussing is superimposition. Why did we come to be in this state? Why are we in this sorry state now? So this is the whole discussion. But remember, the desuperimposition has already started, because when you went through this exercise of I'm not the body, not the mind, not the intellect, and you say why those are wrong, and I am the witness consciousness, why that is right, already a desuperimposition has started. Okay, the next chapter will be desuperimposition proper. Let's quickly take a look at activity in the chat. Okay, Girish says, is it fair to say that in Madhyamaka philosophy, objects are real but inherently non-existing, in contrast to Advaita, where objects are unreal but pure existence? Not quite, because in Madhyamaka philosophy, the objects are real only in the sense that they're conventionally real. Bodies, minds, people, things, they are real conventionally. Nagarjuna introduced this distinction between conventional truth and ultimate truth. He said the Buddha taught two truths. Samritti Satyam, Satyam cha Paramarthikam. Samritti Satyam means transactional truth, relative truth, which we call in Advaita Vedanta Vyavaharika Satyam. So yes, all the objects are conventionally real. But in Advaita Vedanta also all the objects are conventionally real. In our day-to-day life, It's real. If you consider the body to be real, then the chair you are sitting on is also real. You can't say I am this body and the chair I'm sitting on is unreal. Then you'll be fall flat on the floor in no time. So both are of the same order of reality. But ultimately you realize these are unreal or appearances, and Brahman alone is real in Advaita Vedanta. Rick said, he said that all these philosophers are deluded to varying degrees, starting with extremely. If I understood you correctly, last week you said all of them could be enlightened. How could one be both deluded and enlightened? Yeah, all of them could be enlightened, you're right, but I will modify my statement and say I'm leaving out the extremely deluded, the very worldly person, also the materialists who say body is the self, and so on and so forth. And those who could be enlightened, I would include only the ones who starting with the Buddhist. So I will leave out the materialist and the just the simply ignorant person. They are not enlightened, obviously. The Madhyamaka philosopher, for example, might be considered enlightened depending on what interpretation you give to Shunya. Girish says, how can emptiness be equivalent to fullness? Yes. So that is something, for example, Swami Sarvapriyananda says, what we call Purnam, fullness, infinite, is what they call empty, Shunyam. Think about it this way. Golden ornaments, for example. Now, all the ornaments, the gold itself is the reality of all the ornaments. But in the gold, are there any ornaments? This is a subtle question I'm asking. Take the gold itself. Think about the gold itself. So obviously there is for example, the necklace. Yes, but which part of gold is a necklace? None of it. Necklace is the form. Well, at least the form is the necklace. But no, where is the form in the gold? Which form belongs to gold? If there's a form which belongs to gold, if an ornament belongs to gold, it would always be, the gold would always be a necklace, but it isn't. The same gold continues to be a bracelet. It can be a brick of gold. It can be a lump of gold. It can be a ring of gold. So the ring, brick, lump, necklace, they come and go. Gold in itself is empty of all ornaments. Similarly, the ultimate reality is empty of all entities. It is shunyam. You can think of Brahman as a void. Not because nothing is there. Everything, the entire universe being there, Brahman is completely empty. You, the Atman, you're completely empty of the universe. Nothing is there actually from you. Na kinchiditi. Ashtabhakra makes it clear again and again. The enlightened person sees this universe and knows it to be nothing at all. So in that sense, Brahman, pure consciousness, is pure being, pure consciousness, is empty of entities. And the other way around, and yet from an Advaitic perspective, the other way around, everything is full of Brahman. Everything is full of, there's nothing else except Brahman here. It is full. Universe is pervaded through and through. There's a phrase used in the Upanishads, Ota Prota. Ota Prota means the warp and the woof. When you make a cloth, you you spin it this way, weave it this way and that way. So this is called Ota Prota. Everything in this universe is filled to the brim with Brahman in that sense, because there's nothing but Brahman. Sadhu in Uttarakhand put it this way, Thasathas Bharpur. Everything is packed with Brahman. Where will the universe exist? There is no space for anything to exist except Brahman. And see why? It's right here. See, if other than existence, what can exist? If it is something other than existence, it's non-existent. And if it is one with existence, then it's nothing but existence. Just like the golden ornament. If it is anything other than gold, it will disappear. But if it is gold, then it's nothing other than gold. It's not an ornament. So golden ornament is always full of gold. But the gold is always empty of ornament in this sense. Okay, Rodrigo is saying, Sandhya and Rajiv are saying, is it right to say manas plus buddhi is equal to chitta? We have defined chitta. Remember, now I'm going to catch hold of you. All definitions have been more or less given to you. What is body? What is chitta? What is ahankara? What is the intellect? The five koshas, what is gross, what is subtle, what is causal, everything has been explained. So chitta is the function of the mind, which is memory, or the mind altogether is called chitta, which will include mana, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. So mind, what is mind? Buddhi, what is intellect? Ahankara, what is ego? What does it do? What is its function? And chitta, memory, what is its function? So in specifically, memory is called chitta, or all four together, memory, ego, mind and intellect together are taken and called chitta. Do Charvakas acknowledge the law of karma? No, they don't. This is the big thing. They don't. And they say that it all begins with the birth of the body and ends with the death of the body. There is nothing before that and nothing after that individually. Of course, matter goes on, physical matter goes on. They deny it. Alpana is saying that is consciousness intelligent? Okay, again, Sanskrit words, consciousness, chaitanyam, intelligence, buddhi. So is consciousness itself intelligent? No. Is it stupid? No. Intelligent, stupid applies to conditions of the buddhi, and both are illumined by consciousness. So for example, a computer, the laptop I'm using, is it conscious? As far as we know, it's not. Is it intelligent? In a sense, yes, from the behavioral perspective. It can do intelligent things. A mouse, is it intelligent? No, it's pretty dumb. Is it conscious? Yes, it's conscious. All right. Then Punita ji is saying, two facts I seem to take for granted: that I was born, I will die. I have no direct experience of either. The only direct and persistent experience I have is that I'm conscious. Yet I find it hard to live by the fact that I'm pure consciousness. All the hold of Maya. Of course, that is true. But this direct and persistent experience I have that I'm consciousness, I'm conscious or I'm consciousness, often we are saying we have a direct experience of that. Our attention is not there actually. So what Vedanta is doing is persistently drawing our attention to this fact of that we are consciousness. What is consciousness, and that we are always conscious? It's a great thing to become aware of. Pradeep Bose is saying in text 135, attributes like intelligence are quoted, but Brahman is free of attributes. So would you please explain? Text number 135 is, yeah. So Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swabha Satya Swabhava. Intelligence here means consciousness. Nitya, eternal. Shuddha, pure. Buddha is consciousness. Mukta, always free. Satya, existence. In that sense. Then Vishwanath is saying, so Sri Krishna in chapter 9 verses 4 and 5, it says, maintaining these points, Purnam and devoid of all points. Mayan tatamidam sarvam matstani sarvabhutani, and then he denies that. Nacha matstani. That is a great section in chapter 9, Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga, that is I in all beings exist in me. I am that one infinite existence, in all beings exist in me. And the next, he says, just the next verse, Krishna says, behold, they don't exist in me. This is what was going on right now. Good, very good quotation. Abhijit Krishna says, the mouse example was tricky, as you mentioned, just after the computer. It turned out to be conscious. Yes, so it can be conscious without being particularly intelligent, a mouse. Why I mentioned it was, I heard a talk by Anil Seth. He is a consciousness researcher, Dr. Anil Seth in England. So he said something which resonated with me very much in one talk. He said, you don't have to be smart to suffer. You don't have to be smart to suffer. You have to be conscious to suffer. So a mouse is not smart. It can't do many things which computer. Deep Blue can play chess, but the mouse can't play chess. It's not smart. It's not intelligent, but it can suffer. If a cat catches the mouse, you can clearly see the mouse is suffering very much. Suffering requires consciousness. The Deep Blue computer, very intelligent, it can't suffer. So why I'm saying this is, the question was, is consciousness the same as intelligence? No, there can be consciousness without intelligence, and there can be intelligence without consciousness. All on the of course Vyavaharika, the transactional plane. Ultimately, there is only consciousness. What you call mouse, what you call computer, they are not. They are all appearances, like the gold ornaments. The reality is consciousness only. Only in the mouse consciousness is manifest because of the antakarana. Computer doesn't have an antakarana, so consciousness is not manifest there. Okay, Rick says, and yet one cell in the body of a mouse is more complex. Yes, so there's a kind of intelligence inherent in nature, but I'm talking about the intelligence which is part of our minds. Okay, Dimitri will conclude with his question.
Yes, Swamiji, does it mean that ultimately there is still a hint of some faith that is needed? Because until you have the enlightenment, ultimately you have no proof of this theory. Like there is a lot of practicality to it. There is a lot of things that you can observe and verify as true. But the ultimate one, that the Brahman is the ultimate existence and bliss and consciousness, is verifiable only at the enlightenment point, and therefore it sort of requires some faith in it until that point comes.
Yes and no. You see, it's, if it was something that you have to do these practices and then you'll have an extraordinary burst of an experience which will verify all the claims. So like, say in Patanjali Yoga or some Tantra systems, fine, that's one way. And that's also a valid way. That's what you are saying. But actually here it is not like that. This is the beauty of the Advaita system. It's much more like what you understand in mathematics, for example. So you don't have to have anything more than understanding it in mathematics to get it. You work at it, you take it that much for granted that the equations are right. It's not false. You work at it till you get it. Similarly, you work at it till you get it, and this getting it is deepened into what we call enlightenment. There are not two different things. You get it technically, you get it theoretically, I've got it now, but now I have to wait for enlightenment. In Advaita Vedanta, it is on the same spectrum. That getting it itself deepens into enlightenment. There will come a point where you will not even ask this question. You might say that you might not claim enlightenment, but you will have to say this must be right. There's no other way. What else is right?
Right. The thing is that what challenges kind of the ideas that come to my mind when I try to think about this is that, yes, it all seems very logical and clear, but at the same time, I have very short period of time available to me through my observation. Right? What it is, like there is nothing that that I could claim that, let's say, why it's not an infinite regress of the observers. Like during my lifetime, yes, I definitely can see there is no infinite regress on observers. There is one, but I have very short period of time available to me to actually use as a data points for thinking. Like the thought that I cannot explain by logic is that, well, if I extrapolate the time available, like, well, maybe it is an infinite regress. I have no way to prove or disprove it.
Look at it this way. If you raise the issue of time, even time is illumined and revealed by consciousness. Even scales of time. So I might in my dream think that I have had a long and fruitful life of 50 years or 70 years and wake up to realize it was a dream of a few minutes. See, even the scales of time, even the duration of time is actually dependent on our psychological experience of time. It's only when you take a very realistic, reductionist, material view of the universe, then it's fixed. Space is fixed, time is fixed, the theater, the stage is fixed for the drama of life. I can't do anything to it. But when you take an Advaitic perspective, the stage is not fixed. There's a whole drama of life appears in, you are the stage itself, including time and space, they appear in you. Don't put yourself into the consciousness, don't fit yourself into the framework of time and space. Rather, time and space are fitted into the framework or appear in consciousness. Let's think about that. Even the question you asked of a regression of infinite regress of observers, and that I have only a thin slice of time, but this is already accepting a realist worldview. Yeah.
Thank you.
Things are appearing to me that nobody can deny, that you have to accept. But what does it mean? Does it mean that there is a physical universe out there with respect to consciousness. Notice that the entire reductionist materialist worldview has not been able to incorporate consciousness into it so far. And they can only go so far as to say somehow living matter produces consciousness. Yeah, it's worth thinking about. And the beauty the beauty of the Advaitic approach sounds so dramatically, radical, and yet, if Advaita were true, all of science would be true. There would be at no point there would be any conflict with science. It's just the reductionist materialist viewpoint which would not be the final viewpoint. Every scientific discovery would still be valid at its own level. That's the beauty of Advaita, I think. That's the thing why it is so compatible with the deepest modern understanding of the universe. All right, let's end this here. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.